We are on board. I've got my notes. I've got my questions. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes because I've got a question here I need to pull up. All right, welcome to Cosi Talks. Okay, guys, so another hot, sticky day in Tampa, Florida. I think we reached close to 100 degrees again today. And I am just going to get situated here. I've got some of my favorite decaf coffee in my favorite Cosi Talks mug. Oh yeah, we're going to get this evening started properly. All right, for those of you who are watching the replay, please put replay into the comments section. I always like to know who's watching the replay. I like to go back and see and answer any questions that you guys might have. So if you're watching the replay, go ahead and throw that into the comments section. Hey, Tisha, glad you could join in this evening. I see some more folks jumping on board, guys. Don't be shy. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and what is in your mug this evening. I've got, like I said, my husband made me some of my favorite decaf coffee this evening. I've got like something really interesting to talk about tonight. Tonight's topic is kind of a little bit off the beaten path. But it was just one of those topics that was very relevant to a person I'm working with in the past few weeks. So I thought we'd touch upon this topic. So, all right, let's see who else is on board this evening. Guys, can you shout out? I always like to check my tea here because I am not the most tech savvy person. So I always like to make sure they can hear me okay. Hey, we got Liz on board. Thank you for coming in, Liz. We've got Ashley. Ashley, you got your sweet tea? Let's see. 95 degrees in Middle Tennessee. We should have a contest this evening just to see who's got the warmest temperatures because man, oh man, it's been a scorcher. Hey, Chuck. Chuck is here with his tea. Thank you for joining in. Hey there, Harsh. And we've got Meaning. Good day. Oh, Mina. Good day, Mina. That's my Australian there on board. Awesome. Hello from the Outback. Let's see. We got Stephen from Jacksonville and the Cosi Palace tonight. I like that. This is my palace. I like that. We got Marianne. Oh, Marianne, thank you for joining in. I love having you here on my Wednesday evenings. She said it's extra nice here in South Dakota in the 80s. That's actually sounding pretty cool compared over here right now. We've got Donald from New York. We got Butch from Minnesota. Guys, a couple of you messaged me that you were having trouble finding me on Facebook. So just as a reminder, I do stream to my Cosi Talks YouTube channel. Sometimes people find it a little easier to find me there. We've got, hey, Molly. Oh, there's one of my prosthetists there on board this evening. Thank you for joining in. I love it when I have clinicians on board because then I get to ask them for some information as well. Ashley's got lots of sweet tea with lots of ice. We've got Stephen with water. It's good for you. Jean, I've got your question here. 103. Oh, my goodness, in Sacramento Valley. Jean, I've got your question here, and I'll be answering it first. So thank you for getting that in. We've got Andrea on board. There's my resident occupational therapist, David from South Georgia. We got Keith Corbin from Baltimore. All right, there's my Terps right there. And it's 65 degrees. All right, guys. So we got a nice crew on board. Thank you for joining in this evening. For those of you who are watching for the first time, welcome. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist, amputee specialist here in Tampa, Florida. I have my private practice here called Palanca that is exclusively for serving the amputee and limb loss community. And obviously with the show, as you guys can see, I have some new equipment here. Let's see if I got the right one. Check out what I've got, guys. I am so excited about this. And I have a really funny story about this leg that I'll tell you guys a little bit later on in the show. But let's go ahead and get started. And guys, I did not have a lot of questions emailed to me this week. Y'all kind of left me hanging there. So I have something kind of cool to talk about. But go ahead and feel free to start putting in some of your questions. Denise says, good evening from hot, humid North Carolina. 97 degrees today. Winter, where are you? I know, nowhere to be found, that's for sure. So Jean had a really great question here. She says, I have your above the knee exercise book and I'm loving it. And yes, I'm going to take this time to do a shameless plug on my book, guys. Those of you who haven't had a chance to see it, I have two books. I have an above the knee book and I have a below the knee book. This one is my above the knee book. And I've got exercises literally from head to toe for amputees, specifically for amputees. And these exercises range from beginner, intermediate to advanced athletic exercises. So I've got everything in here. And I've also got an online videos to go with all of these exercises that you can check out. I'm going to go ahead and type it in here, take my chance to do my little plug here. For those of you who have not had a chance to check it out, there's the tab for it. So Dean's question is, as an AK, I'm working with my yoga teacher. We're both aware that when I do squats and balance exercises, I lean to the side. And it appears that the models in the book are able to go straight up and down and not lean with their balance or squats. Also, my prosthetic leg doesn't touch the floor, even with my sound leg. That part's a little confusing to me. Could this be because my residual limb is long, which is right above the knee? I have a C4 leg. Yes. Okay. So here's the deal. When it comes to doing squats, right, guys, I'm going to try to find it here in the book so you guys can see what it looks like in the book. Because yes, my models in the book, they're actually doing a really phenomenal job of showing good form in the book. But here's the dirty little secret, okay? So here you can see Robin, and I'm going to put it up here nice and close. You can see Robin is doing a really nice job of bending both of her legs. But if you look real closely, okay, she is favoring her sound leg. She is favoring her sound leg. When I worked on this project, guys, we had basically 2 days, 2 days to film 150 segments. Okay, so we didn't have time. We had to motor. And mistakes were made. And when I mean mistakes, I mean when my models were doing these exercises, even though all of them were in phenomenal shape, they struggled with some of these exercises with the form. And those of you who have gotten my videos, and you can see there's some sample videos on the front page of my Strong Body website, they make their mistakes, right? And you can hear me in the videos correcting them on their form, correcting them on things. And we left that purposely as we were doing post-editing, we left that in there. And I did that on purpose because I wanted people to see when you're learning how to do these exercises, it's not going to be perfect the first, maybe second, maybe even third time that you do these exercises, right? Because I find that with my patients and some of you as my viewers, you get frustrated when you see some of these models doing these exercises so perfectly that it's discouraging because you're not able to do it perfectly the first few that you do this exercise. But if you think about it, that's the whole point you're doing the exercise, right? So that you can get stronger and so that your form and your balance can improve while you're doing this, right? And I see this a lot, especially in my squatting exercises with my above the knee amputees, because you're having to negotiate that prosthetic knee. Okay, if you are a knee disarticulation, it can be a little bit of a challenge because of the fact that you have such a long residual limb and you're negotiating that knee. So that can sometimes throw that alignment off. Okay. So when I do a squat with an above the knee amputee, first of all, we figure out what kind of a knee do we have going on. Okay. Some people figure out, like, for example, my models figured out how to kind of unlock their knee and go down with it. So they might unlock their knee. And then as they're going down, they try to even the weight. And then as they go up, when they're pushing up from the squat, that's where they also try to push up with both feet. That's where you really try to get the weight even. And you might need to use a chair for support. So here you can see from the side view, Robin's using a chair, right? And you can see when she's squatting down that her heel is coming up off the floor. Okay, those little things are going to happen. You can adjust by perhaps putting a little bumper underneath the heel. Some people will do that. Okay, and it's figuring out what your knee does and how it works. My other above the knee model, Jonathan, when he did this exercise, he actually put his knee into free swing. So there was no friction whatsoever, and he found that it was easier for him to do it that way. Okay, there's many different ways to modify it. So don't get frustrated if you don't get it right the first time. What you're striving to do when you do the squat is you are striving to do equal weight bearing as best as you can. Okay, so if the first time you do it, you're putting only 30% of your weight through your prosthetic limb, well, then you know, okay, next time I do this exercise, I want to make it 40% weight bearing on my prosthetic side. And then asking your prosthetist, in some cases, how can you adjust the friction in your knee to allow yourself to do this exercise? And I've seen videos online of some of you who have microprocessor knees that you're able to go down. It's very easy, and that's fine. You can do a single leg squat just a little bit at a time. Okay. But the point with these exercises, and then with my below the knee amputee, when it comes squats, a lot of the limitations come with the rim of the socket, where when they're bending down, sometimes their knee is crunching up against the rim of the socket, or the back of the knee gets uncomfortable because the liner bunches up there. So again, we figure out ways to how to modify this exercise. It doesn't have to look picture perfect. Okay, the whole point is to work towards looking good form. I hope that makes sense. All right, here we go. I need some coffee tonight. Stephen, that's a great question. Stephen asks, how should a socket fit? And should there be times that it can be uncomfortable? So how a socket should fit, it should fit like a glove. Okay, a nice, comfortable, snug fitting glove. Not too loose, not too tight, just right. Okay, so it should feel like something is hugging your residual limb in all the right places. Okay, and then for each person, that can be just a little bit different. And again, this is where it's a lot of communication with your prosthetist, a lot of communication also with your physical therapist while you're doing physical therapy and trying to put the socket through the gauntlet. Okay, talking about how it feels and how it fits. Okay, and many of you who have watched my show, you should know that one of my things that I really harp on, a socket should never hurt. Right, there should never be pain associated with wearing a socket, a prosthetic limb. Will there be discomfort? Yes, especially in the beginning. There is expected to be discomfort. Why? Because you have never experienced in your life having something attached to your leg for the whole day before, right? You know, I kind of liken it to people who are not amputees. I'm like, well, imagine having to tie on a garbage bag to your leg all day and try to negotiate with that, right? It's a very strange sensation, right? And even when we wear pants, they're not going to fit hopefully nearly as tight as that socket, as snug fitting as that socket. So it's definitely a discomfort and a getting used to it moment, okay? And working with your prosthetist and communicating to them, this is what I'm feeling, and for them to tell you, yes, that's part of the normal process versus no, you should not be feeling that. This is where you really need to have that good communication with your prosthetist, okay? So there should not be pain. Pain is telling you that something is not fitting properly, okay? Discomfort, yes, but even with that discomfort, especially those of you who are my newbies, getting used to wearing your socket, that discomfort should diminish over time, okay? As you get stronger, excuse me, as you wear that socket more during your day, that discomfort should slowly decrease. And ideally, you get to the point where you just put your leg on in the morning, you go about your day until the end of the day where you take your leg off at night. Okay, that's the ideal situation. And it is attainable. It is attainable. Good question, Stephen. Hey, Sandra, glad you could join in. Let's see. Ashley says, having a revision surgery on Friday, which exercises from the book would be good to do while recovering until I get PT orders? And should I get PT orders before I get refitted or wait until after I get refitted? Ashley, you know me. Physical therapy should be there the moment you wake up. So basically, as soon as possible, Ashley, Ashley, is very individual. So for your revision, probably the role of your physical therapist to make sure that you can mobilize out of bed safely, right, and that you're able to get around with your walker or crutches or whatever it is that you're using before they send. I seem to have a frog in my throat this evening. When you go home, Ashley, go ahead and get the clearance from your surgeon to start physical therapy right away. You can be doing a lot to help manage the swelling in your limb. A lot of the exercises that we will do, the straight leg raises in particular, Ashley, the quad sets, the glute sets, and the straight leg raises. Those are the three big groups of exercises for post-op. That would be good for you once your surgeon has cleared you. Okay, but Ashley, I know you're very proactive about your care, and I love that. So before you go into surgery, just show the surgeon. Show the surgeon the book and just show him, hey, these are the exercises that I plan on doing right after surgery. Can we get physical therapy in here to work with me with them? Okay, and the more that you do right after surgery, the faster that swelling is going to help go down. My grammar is today. The faster that swelling will go down and the faster you're going to recover from that. Let's see. Stephen says, I spent the past 4 years trying to get a good fit, and I don't know if I should tolerate a certain amount of discomfort sometimes. I have a strong but fleshy above the knee residual limb. Here's what I find, Stephen, and I have had more than one patient in your situation, and it is so frustrating, especially when you know you have a good prosthetist, right? But you're just struggling to get that perfect, comfortable fit, okay? And this is something where I really I don't get upset, but I'm like, physical therapy, okay? Especially in my above the knee amputees. Here's what happens, right? And this happens all the time, right? A person with an above the knee amputation, right? Here's my socket, above the knee socket, right? And it's a, yeah, right-sided. Am I looking at this the right way? Yes, right-sided socket. I had to take my sockets off to cough. Okay. When your limb goes into here, right, it has to be stabilized, right? Typically, when you have a full-length limb, come here, Bob, right? When you have a full-length limb, this part of your leg is helping to stabilize your femur, and it prevents your femur from clapping around, right? But when you have an above the knee amputation, you no longer have that stability from the lower leg. So the socket has to provide that stability, right? And it does it by what we call a bony lock. It basically locks in the soft tissues with pressure here in the groin area right here, and pressure here to kind of help keep everything stabilized, right? What also contributes to this stability is glute strength. Okay. And this is something that I see overlooked all the time in the prosthetist offices, right? I love my prosthetist. I really do. And I'm saying this, because this is just the working relationship I have with the prosthetist in my area. I'll go in and the prosthetist is trying to get that socket comfortable, get that socket comfortable, but they haven't looked at the glute strength. And that's often the missing piece, especially with my amputees who are years out of their amputation, right? And maybe they just haven't been doing their exercises and haven't been keeping up with their strength. And they're getting that distal femur pain, right? They get that pain and pressure, especially in the bottom lateral, the outside part, okay, distal lateral part of the femur. Okay. And a part of that is because they don't have the glutes. The glutes help stabilize that femur and keep it in that angle that we need it in to be stable. Okay. So Stephen, when I hear about a case like yours, where it's just discomfort, like there's just something that's just not comfortable and you've been in a socket for several years now, look at your glute strength. Okay. I have one lady right now that she's been my patient now on and off for several years now. And whenever she comes in to see me and she starts talking about, man, this pain right here. And I go, sweetheart, this is your glute strength. You've got to get back to doing your glute strengthening exercises. And it's a use it or lose it mentality. If you're not on top of that glute strengthening exercises, guys, and if you're not doing it 2 to 3 times a week, you're going to lose that strength. And you're also going to lose that stability of the socket. And you're going to start feeling uncomfortable. And guys, I know it's a pain. I know it's a pain to have to do these exercises 2 or 3 times a week, but the trade-off is the comfort level in the socket. Because sometimes it's not the prosthetist and it's not the socket. It's coming from the individual. So Stephen, in your case, especially since you have a fleshy above the knee residual limb, this is something I would really look at. Have someone really take a look at your glute strength. And I don't mean just the person has to the physical therapist has to put you in the right position to test those muscles properly. And that's only something that a physical therapist is trained to do. Okay. To do the proper manual muscle testing. All right. It's not something that you can find on a simple screening process. Okay. And again, I'm talking a lot about this because I see this happening in the clinics here, and I see the frustrations that my patients go through, and it's solved very easily with strengthening. All right, here we go. All right. Hey, we got Mark S on board. Excuse me. Guys, I don't know what's up with my throat today. Okay. So David says, those above the knee squats are tough, but good. Making adjustments to the knee and doing the actual squat is done by making minor adjustments. And they really make me work when pushing up. It's been getting better as I work through them. And it really, truly is the case, guys. When you're doing these squats, when you're doing some of these complicated exercises, you have to just figure out a way of how you can do it. It's not if you can do it, it's how can you get your body into the correct positioning to do these exercises. And honestly, it really also teaches you a lot about the prosthetic componentry that you're using, right? How much more do I learn about a prosthetic knee trying to get someone to do a squat with it and figuring out, okay, how can I unlock this knee without making them buckle and crash down the way, right? And how can we get them to really activate and do this exercise? Vikram, there's another one of my prosthetists right there. Vikram says, Steve, always communicate socket issues. Don't be hesitant in expressing discomfort. Being a prosthetist, we would want to know the issues to be resolved. Amen to that. And he's absolutely right, guys. And again, this is where communication with the prosthetist, communication with the physical therapist. I always joke around that prosthetists will look at a patient with different colored glasses, right? As a physical therapist, I primarily look to see what is deficient in the patient. What is missing from the patient that can help them improve their gait, that can help them improve the comfort of their socket. The prosthetist is obviously looking at the prosthesis. What is going on with the prosthesis? How can we make the prosthesis better to make it more comfortable for the patient? Now, obviously, there's a lot of overlap between the two of us. As a PT, yes, I do know a lot about prosthetic componentry. And as a prosthetist, they're going to know to spot some of these deficiencies as well. But again, the team approach there, and it all starts with the patient communicating, saying, hey, this is not comfortable. Even if it's 4 years later, guys, keep squeaking that wheel. We got Beth Hudson on board from Nebraska on her way to RMNP. Cool. All right. Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, Pastor David, you fed me a good one. He says, what is your favorite exercise to target contracture? I've been laying down on my stomach, walking backwards, and stretching all ears. So, David, it's a combination of all of those things. And it really is, if I had to name one exercise, hang on, guys, let me see if I can find it here. See, the thing is, I have a lot of exercises in this book. That's a shameless plug, I know. Here we go. So when it comes to contractures, let me pull Bob out for a second. Where'd you go, Bob? Here we go. Okay. So when it comes to contractures, this is something that my above the knee patients and below the knee patients are susceptible to. Above the knee are more susceptible to hip flexor contractures. So there's the front of your hip, right? You've got a big juicy muscle that comes right here. It's called your iliopsoas, and it's a short muscle. It's big and wide, but it's not very long, right? It only attaches like right here, right? So when you have your entire leg, the weight of your leg helps keep this part limber, right? But when you lose that part of your leg and you don't have that body weight holding it down, this muscle, because it's so big and juicy, tends to take over. And it makes the hip want to be in this position, in hip flexion, okay? And sometimes it can get to the point where it loses that flexibility. That tendon starts to undergo changes and it becomes a contracture, meaning it's tight and it doesn't want to go back. And this is something that PTs and prosthetists, we look for a lot. It's called the Thomas test. And we look for to see the tightness in the hip flexors, okay? Oftentimes, a prosthetist might put in a hip flexion plate, and that's basically to help compensate for the hip flexion contracture, okay? So they might put a little device of the prosthesis that will artificially give your leg a little bit more room to move, okay? So when someone comes into my clinic and I'm just like, I spot that hip flexion plate, I automatically know there's hip flexor tightness, and that's something that we need to start working on to see if we can get rid of that hip flexion plate. My favorite way of doing it is honestly with dynamic stretching. So what do I mean by dynamic stretching? We have static stretching and we have dynamic stretching. Static means that you're basically taking the muscle and you are the one stretching it, okay? Or your physical therapist is the one taking your limb and cranking on it and you know, stretching it. You're not actively doing anything, okay? You are passively stretching that muscle. With dynamic stretching, it's like the name indicates, you are putting movement into it. You are causing the muscle to kind of almost stretch itself. And of the two methods, I prefer dynamic stretching. I feel like it's more effective. I feel like you have more control over it. How many of you guys have been stretched out by a physical therapist before? We're brutal, man. We are beasts when it comes to stretching out our patients. I've had to put some patients through the gauntlet in trying to get rid of some of these contractures, whether it was with burn unit or spinal cord injury or with amputee. Man, when a physical therapist jumps on your leg and starts stretching it out, it is not comfortable, okay? We're kind of brute sometimes, all right? So for me, if I can do it with dynamic stretching and let the patient be in control of their stretch, I find that it's more effective. So how do you do that, okay? The best way for me that I have found, and I found this out on accident actually, just after patient after patient and going, hey, my patients are really progressing really well with their hip flexion. Retro walking. Sometimes we call this backwards walking, and that's basically it. Okay? So when you are walking backwards, and this is a skill that I have all of my patients do, especially in the parallel bars, okay? When you're walking backwards, I have my patient place one foot directly behind the other, okay? And in order to do that, okay, you have to bring your leg back. So what are you doing when you bring your leg back? You stretch your leg, right? You're stretching that front part of the hip. And then when you stretch your leg back and plant your foot down, right, you're closing that chain and you're using your body weight to stretch out that muscle, and you're stretching it out while it's warm, while it's moving, okay? If I had to pick one exercise for hip flexor stretching, that one, okay? The ones where you lay on your belly and you stretch, yes, absolutely. But a lot of my patients, they can't tolerate laying on their belly. It hurts their back, or maybe they have a big belly and it's not comfortable for them to be laying on their belly. Okay. And again, it's a static stretch. When you're doing that, you're doing a static stretch. Okay. There's other ones, and also included in this book. There's one static stretch that actually I do kind of like. Let me see if I can find that one. Can you tell that I love using my book? All right. Give me a second. Give me a second. Here we go. All right. So this is one of my static stretches for hip flexors that I actually really do like. All right. So here, and it's a little tough to see, Robin is my beautiful model in this picture. And what she's doing is she's hanging her residual limb off the edge of the mat. Okay. So right here, she's got her limb pushed off the edge of the mat, and she's letting gravity bring it down. Now, as you can see, she's not bringing it down very far because she has hip flexor tightness, okay? And sometimes if I'm feeling particularly nice to my patient, I might give them a nice hack to put on top of their hip to help kind of just relax them a little bit and let gravity take effect, okay? So but if I had to pick one exercise, I would say it's the backwards walking. Not to mention, it's also really great for developing proprioception and your balance. So lots of stuff in one. Stephen, as far as how many times you do your squats in a week, the general rule of thumb is you exercise each muscle group 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, so if you're deciding, a lot of people like to make it easy, so they divide it up into legs, core, arms, right? So if you're exercising your leg muscle 2 to 3 times a week, and ideally leave at least one rest day in between. Okay, so remember what I've talked about when it comes to muscle strengthening physiology, guys. When you overload a muscle, you cause those little micro tears. So you have to let your muscle rest so that those micro tears can heal a little bit stronger. Okay, so 2 to 3 a week, and you'd be surprised at how effective it can be. I've been very good, because I've actually, when it comes to my own personal fitness, I will run till the cows come home, but I hate doing strengthening exercises. It's my dirty little secret. But lately I've been doing it for the past 6 months, and I've been very good about 2 to 3 times a week. And guys, I've got it down to where in half an hour I can be done with all of my strengthening for the day. Okay, so if you're doing it properly with good form, you can really keep it up with minimal time there. Mark says, doesn't actually walking and using the prosthesis help to give you that glute strength? Yes and no. Okay, so when you don't have any kind of a deficit or any kind of an impairment, yes, walking will definitely give you glute strength. But when you think about the nature of an amputation, Mark, there's damage done to the soft tissues, okay? And when the human body is recovering from an injury, the human body is going to take the easy way out, okay? So if you do not target these muscles and strengthen specifically these muscles, your brain is going to tell your body to take the easy way out. And this happens a lot with my patients, okay? I'll have someone come in and they figured out how to walk with their prosthesis and they're getting along pretty well. But when I start testing their individual muscle groups, I start to see a lot of deficits. Why? Because they never targeted those muscle groups specifically when they were in the recovery process. So the brain just said, well, let's just use the bare minimum that we absolutely need to get from point A to point B. And this is where you start to see gait deficits, right? This is where you start to see some compensations, gait abnormalities. Some people call it having a limp, right? Or you have that one person that he can walk beautifully, but then when he tries to do a higher level activity like running, he can't figure out why he's not able to do it. Okay? So yes, walking is certainly a very, very big part of developing the glute strength, but sometimes you have to target those glutes specifically, not give them any wiggle room. It's like getting that kid who doesn't want to learn their multiplication tables and you finally sit them down. Ask me how I know. Sit him down and make him learn to do his multiplication tables, and then he's good to go. It's the same thing with walking with these prosthetic devices. Yeah, you can kind of fudge your way through it, but at some point you're going to have to sit down and do that glute strengthening exercise properly. Okay. Ooh, I love this question. David asks, I'm a bilateral above the knee amputee as of September 2021 and wondering if stubbies should be worn prior to getting full-size prosthetics. My prosthetics seem so heavy. Yes, I love stubbies. And if I have any of my prosthetists on board who would like to chime in, please feel free to do so. I love stubbies. I think they are the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to doing training with bilateral above the knee amputees. Okay, David, as you just pointed out right now, prosthetics are going to feel extremely heavy to a bilateral above the knee amputee. Okay, so getting your body used to it, getting your body prepped for the amount of endurance that you're going to need to walk on full length legs is huge. Not to mention that when you're in stubbies, you're developing core strength, okay? You're working on these glute strength as well. You're working on everything, but you're doing it in a controlled environment, okay? And it's still hard work, guys, okay? So when you progress to the full length prosthetic devices, you've already started to develop that muscle strength that you need. Otherwise, you're going to be in those full-length prosthetic devices and you're going to be getting frustrated because A, you're going to be completely exhausted and wiped out because you're not going to have that endurance just yet, and you're not going to have that strength yet. Okay, so yes. And then as a later on down the line practical side, a lot of my bilateral above the knees tend to keep their stubbies, okay? And they use them as part of their daily mobility. Okay, so Jeffrey Cook is one of my favorite bilateral above the knees out there, and he posts some amazing videos. So for example, when it comes to mowing his lawn, he uses his stubbies. Why? Because it's so much easier for him to do it that way versus walking in tall grass, pushing a lawnmower with full length legs, and he's still getting quite a workout. Okay, so for certain activities, I see that he uses his stubbies to get around, and some of my patients have done that in the past as well. All right, so Chuck asks, are bridges the glute exercise? Yes, and they are one of my favorite glute exercises. I love bridges. Love bridges. And one of the reasons I love bridges is because I can modify it in so many different ways for different levels of amputation, different levels of fitness, okay? I can get someone who's fresh out of surgery to do a modified bridge, okay? But I can also take someone who is a high-end athlete and make them break a sweat with some of the modifications that we can do with the bridges there as well. And again, the more you do with those bridges, and especially activating all those muscles, you're activating glutes, you're activating core. Ooh, and as a bonus, you're also doing dynamic stretching of your hip flexors, okay? Because as you're going into that bridging position, you are putting a real nice stretch on those hip flexors. So a lot of bang for your buck with the bridges. And guys, when it comes to fitness program, I don't know, some of you may know my personal life. I have 4 kids, right? So I've got a 4-ring circus. I'm running a clinic. I've got my show. So I have like this much time in my day to do a fitness program. And for me, fitness is my therapy. Like that's my way. I break a sweat every day. And that's what kind of keeps me going throughout the day. But obviously I've got 30 minutes max a day to get my fitness in, okay? So when it comes to doing my strength training for keeping myself healthy for running, I don't have 10 different exercises that I do. I think at most, in any given day, I'm doing 4, maybe 5 exercises that are incorporating many different muscle groups. And I'm also really working on my form. Okay, really working on my form when I do these exercises. I think a lot of times when we see, especially in pop culture today, when it comes to strengthening and fitness, that it has to be fancy exercises with fancy equipment and 40 million different types of exercises. And it's actually like, no, bread and butter exercises, which is basically this book right here. And most of my exercises for myself come from this book. Bread and butter exercises that are done well and with good form and good attention to muscle physiology. Okay. All right, here we go. Next. Ooh, Beth is in Rocky Mountain National Park. That's what that stood for. That's awesome, Beth. Comadre, you made it. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Line. So Stephen says, I had a contracture because I was in a wheelchair for 3 months after amputation because of a broken pelvis. Yep, that'll give you a contracture. And guys, another side note about contractures, if you feel like you have a contracture, again, there's varying degrees of contracture. Some of them can become as serious as having a fixed contracture where the tendon of the muscle has basically calcified, right? And there's not a whole lot that can be done there. So if you have a long-term contracture, again, good idea to have a PT lay eyes on you, because in stretching some of these contractures out, you can actually hurt yourself. Okay. And I've seen it done. Some folks who get a little over aggressive with their stretching, whether it's the hip flexors or the hamstrings or their back or whatever the case may be. If you have muscle tightness, again, this is where the neighborhood-friendly physical therapist comes into play to show you how to do this in a way that is safe for your body and according to the tolerance that you can withstand there with that. Let's see. Ooh, Molly says, big question, bilateral above the knees and stairs. That is a very big question. And I got to be honest, Molly, there's not been many times where I've done stairs with bilateral above the knees. There's not many times where that happens. And anytime I've had the opportunity to help someone learn how to do stairs as a bilateral above the knee, we do it a little differently every time. And a lot of it is guess and check. And I hate to sound like so kind of wishy-washy in that regard, but the amount of energy, right, that it takes for a bilateral above the knee to go up and down stairs is considerable. You have to take into account what kind of knees do they have. Do we lock one knee? Do we lock both knees? Okay. And then just figure out how to get them to hip hike, right? Hike up their hip and get that one leg up the stair, certainly with hand railings, right? And figuring out how they can safely do it. And I can honestly say, every patient that I've trained to do it, they've done it a little bit differently every time. It's kind of like the skill of getting up off the floor. Everybody has their own way. Like, we have some basic techniques that we teach as physical therapists. But for the most part, everybody kind of figures out. Everybody just kind of figures out their way of how they're going to get up and down those steps safely. Stephen says, my PT did a lot of stretching and we eliminated the contracture. Yeah. And with these contractures, guys, it takes time. That's the other thing with contractures and stretching. It takes time to work some of these things out. It does take time. Let's see. Okay, let's see here. Ashley says it feels so good after that good PT stretch, though. Yeah. Hey, Ray, thanks for coming on board. There's another one of my physical therapist colleagues right there. Let's see. Andrea says, ever use the foam roller supine along the spine? Yes. I do love using the foam roller in that regard. I feel like it just opens up the chest right here, especially when it's running vertically along the spine. I think that's a really wonderful one right there. It just kind of helps open everything up. Let's see, foam rollers. Yeah, I'm starting to really get more. I'm old school when it comes to my stretching, but I'm starting to really incorporate some of the foam rolling as well into some of these stretches. Let's see. Thank you, Vikram, for feeding me that one. Vikram says, can you please advise on the benefits of pre-amputation, pre-prosthetic therapy for the elective amputations? And the answer is yes, please. Can I have some more? Okay, so we talked a little bit about this last week when one person asked me, should physical therapy happen before surgery? And the answer is yes. Okay, once upon a time, before Medicare did a number on rehab, a lot of patients would come in for pre-surgical physical therapy, whether it's a hip replacement, knee replacement, ACL repairs, amputations, right? Receiving a course of physical therapy prior to your surgery was a very normal course. That was part of protocol and standard of care. Not so much anymore, okay? But guys, I don't have to pull out any fancy research studies to let you know that the more strengthening you do going into your surgery, the better equipped you're going to be recovering from that surgery. Okay. And guys, I speak from professional experience, but I also speak from personal experience. I had 4 or 5 surgeries related to my breast cancer. And I did a lot of strengthening, a lot of fitness going into each one of those surgeries. Okay. And the surgeons were always kind of like a little bit taken aback when they would see how quickly I would bounce back from these surgeries. I'm like, yeah, dude, you remember I'm kind of a PT, this is what I do. Okay. But having that strengthening in place, okay, helped with mobility right after surgery. It got me moving a lot faster. It helped my muscles, they were already strong. It was just a matter of helping reach the swelling after surgery. Okay, and the same thing with amputation, guys. I see the folks, I can tell when someone's had physical therapy prior to their amputation versus the ones who did not. Okay, the ones some sort of physical therapy prior to amputation or who were extremely active prior to their amputation, they bounce back so much faster, okay? Their recovery process, the wound healing is a lot faster because they're already pumping that swelling out of that residual limb with all of their movement that they're doing, okay? And then obviously they're coming out of surgery with a stronger muscle, okay, than people who did not do the strengthening prior to surgery. So absolutely, if you know you are having a revision done, if you know that you are going into your amputation, you're having an elective amputation, as Vikram mentioned, squeak the wheel. Ask for a short course of physical therapy, okay? And then push for it. It's your right to have it, okay? Hey, Jody's back in the Cosi Talks house again. All right. Mark said, true, you said I needed to target my glutes even with my amount of walking. And again, Mark, for someone like yourself, you're in such great shape, but it's a matter of saying, how can I get into the best shape possible? And how can I prevent injury down the line? Okay, because a lot of times people will tell me, well, I'm walking around, I'm fine, I didn't do any strengthening or anything like that. On the inside, I'm going, yeah, but eventually it's going to catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you. As our bodies age, we need to keep it up. All right. Vikram is there saying, guys, I got to give a shout out to Vikram here. He's a prosthetist over in Chicago, in the Chicago area. Quantum Prosthetic and Orthotics has been a wonderful support of the show, so I just want to give him a quick shout out. Liz say, agreed. I also started with stubbies. Everybody here, like, yes, we love our stubbies. And I'm just also going to give a shout out. I wish I had a sample here. My favorite stubby foot, the College Park Sidekicks. And I'm going to write that down. So any of you who are curious about that, I love College Park Sidekicks. And it's like, I call it it's like a goat foot with a tread on the bottom. It's, so I don't know if you guys have seen a stubby foot. They're typically like rectangular shape. Usually they're just they come like really tiny, or they can come a little bit bigger. So this one's just a little bit bigger. It's like a rectangular shape, and it has a nice rubber tread on the bottom. But more importantly, it moves. So it's multi-axial. So typically with a stubby foot, right, you have your above the knee socket, and the little stubby foot just goes underneath it, and it doesn't really move. With the College Park Sidekicks foot, it kind of has a little bit of movement to it, which is kind of really nice. So that's just my little showing love to College Park tonight. All right. Marianne says, bridges are hard for me. They're hard for me too. I put them in my own exercise routine, and they literally kick my butt when I do them. But let me tell you, they are so effective. Very, very, very effective. Oh, you don't know what to... Okay, Susan, who wants to see a video? Do y'all want me to show you a video of a bridge? Might just be easier to do it that way. Y'all want to see a video? Who wants to see a video? Say, I want to see a video, and I'll put the video on. If you guys don't want to see the video, I won't put it on. Oh, Jody, that sounds like fun. So Molly, my other prosthetist, I'm going to give Molly a shout out. She's in North Carolina. Another wonderful Renew Prosthetic and Orthotics. They are another company, another clinic that is supporting the Cosi Talk show. So a shout out to Molly, and thank you for coming on board. And she says, late response, but yes, absolutely stubbies. Get to your independence much quicker. Let's see. Marianne says, I need 2 handrails, but I can get off the floor pretty quickly now. Marianne, you just continue to amaze me. David asked, how does one find out about revisions? Okay, so basically a revision surgery is when there's a problem of some sort that needs to be fixed with the residual limb. So that could be a bone spur. That could be a neuroma. It could be that the person has a lot of scar tissue. It could be that there's a lot of excessive soft tissue or a lot of skin at the end of the residual limb, and it's impeding a good socket fit. Okay. So revisions are something that I see a lot done, but there's, usually it's the last resort because you have to go in for surgery. And so with the revision, depending on the reason the revision is being done, the person might lose a little bit of length on that residual limb in the process. So again, it's something that you try to fix the problem using conservative methods, and usually revision is kind of the last resort. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about revisions. Okay. Oh, you guys want to see the video? Okay. I'm going to show the video. All right. Here we go. Oops. Nope, that's not the right button. Let me make sure I got the right button here. There we go. All right. So let's do the above the knee bridge so you guys can see what that looks like. So for those of you who have the program, you'll find it under legs, phase 1. And I'm the one without the prosthesis. Let's do that one.
This is probably my favorite exercise to do with my patients, and even for myself in my own thing. The reason why I love bridging is because it can just be modified and applied to all different levels of function and fitness, and also different levels of amputation. Okay, so if you're first starting out with this exercise, I would recommend either doing a foam roller. You can also use a small foam bolster. You can also use a towel that's been a big towel that's been wrapped up into a roll and position it right underneath your residual limb. Your other leg is going to be right here bent with the foot flat floor. So for this exercise, before you lift, you're going to squeeze your gluteal muscles together. Basically, squeeze your butt together. Once you squeeze your butt together, you're going to lift your hips up off the mat. And you're pushing down with this foot, but you're also pushing down here. Now, you may have to adjust the positioning if you have any sensitivity when you're pushing into the residual limb. You're going to hold the contraction for 5 seconds, and then you're going to slowly lower your hips down. Very good. The key to this when you're doing it without the prosthesis is, once again, try to put as much weight as possible into the residual limb side. It's natural to want to favor this side, but again, we're trying to really activate the muscles over here. So she's going to squeeze her gluteal muscles, lift up her hips, and while she's doing it, she's also making sure that both of her hips are even, that one hip hasn't dropped down further than the other, and she's doing a good job with it. And then back down again. So again, start by holding the contraction for 5 seconds, and as you get stronger, you're going to hold it for a longer period of time. So let's just do one more. Squeeze the glutes, lift up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and back down again. All right, guys, give it a try.
Okay, did that go through? So for those of you who have the book, it's on page 37, phase 1 legs. And here's that very same exercise. And I have it also in the program showing how you can do it with the prosthesis, because I do get that question a lot. Do I do the exercise with or without the prosthesis? So if you are comfortable doing it with your prosthesis, I always encourage you to do it with the prosthesis, because that just, again, reinforces in your brain that that is your leg. But for someone, for example, like Robin, my beautiful model who was doing it, she has a shorter residual limb. So it's more of a challenge for her to keep that leg on with good suction suspension. So it's easier, it's more efficient for her to target those glute muscles using the foam roller. Okay. And then later on in that exercise series, so that was a phase 1 bridges. That's like my beginner, how the beginner does the bridges without the prosthesis. And later in the program in phase 2 and phase 3, I show you how to progress that exercise and make it more challenging. So as you could see, when Robin was lifting her hips, she did a really nice job of keeping her hips even. And you can see she's stretching out that hip flexor, right? She's stretching out that front part of that hip. And interestingly enough, I had a patient who came in from out of state last week, young man, lovely young man. And we were working on this particular exercise, and it took a good 10 to 15 minutes to get him to do the exercise properly. You know, it's a challenging exercise to do. And as you heard me say in the video, you have to adjust things for your comfort level. Those of you who have a sensitive residual limb, you might have to pad the bottom of it so that when you push down into it, you don't have that sensitivity, right? You might have to adjust the positioning of your sound limb, and you got to play around with it. And it takes time to get that form correctly done. Okay. Let's see. Well, and for my bilateral amputees, and guys, it's my hope, it's my hope to get the resources to be able to create this program for my bilaterals, to put specifically a bilateral program. So, guys, I'm not forgetting about you. I'm waiting for certain resources to come in. But how a bilateral would do it is the same way. So instead of having the foam roll underneath one residual limb, you would place the foam roll beneath both of your residual limbs, okay? And then you would push your hips up in the same way. In some cases, my bilaterals actually have an easier time because they're not competing with their sound leg to do the exercise. So both sets of glutes have to work together to get that movement. Okay. Pat, oh, Pat, hello, Pat. Pat says, as an AK 5 years out, I recall my PT drilling into my head these words: squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt. Each time I took a step in my new prosthesis, it was meant to help strengthen my glutes and make a more natural experience. I still think back to those words now. Sometimes I get lazy with my walking. Yes, absolutely. And guys, don't get me wrong. When I'm doing gait training with my patients, I do see that as a strengthening exercise. But when I'm doing the gait training, I'm doing exactly what Pat says. I'm like drilling my patients and telling them to activate, whether it's getting them to rotate their pelvis a little bit more, whether it's getting them to do that arm swing, whether it's getting them to squeeze that butt every time their foot hits the floor, right? To activate that butt every single time. It cracks me up, Pat. Okay, but that's why we call it gait training. Okay, that's why that's the difference between a physical therapist and someone who's not a physical therapist. Okay, so if the physical therapist isn't drill sergeant yelling at you and getting you to do stuff while you're walking, they're not doing gait training. They're just kind of taking you for a walk, and that's not what they should be doing. So there we go. All right, Butch says, should I be doing the bridge being a bilateral below the knee with legs on? So Butch, when it comes to doing for my below the knee patients, whether you're a unilateral or bilateral, I always try to see if you can do it with the legs first. You have a much longer lever arm. You have the benefit of having both of your anatomical knees there. Okay. So you have that advantage. Now, you might have to adjust the positioning to make sure that the brim of your prosthesis isn't cutting into the back of your knee, to make sure that your liner, isn't also bunching up in the back of your knee and causing some chafing. So it's a little bit of troubleshooting to see how you can modify the positioning to make sure. You might have to spread your leg down just a little bit more. If you find that you really just cannot find a comfortable position to do this with your prosthetic legs on, you can certainly do it with your prosthetic legs off, okay? And you would position the foam roll underneath where your calf muscle is. Okay, so below your knee, that's where you would position the foam roll, and you would just squeeze your butt, lift it up off the mat, same way. Okay. Did I get everything? I got everything. Okay. Woohoo! Got all the questions. All right, guys. So I have an exciting announcement. I will be going to Guatemala next week. I'm so excited. So excited. So next Wednesday, myself, my 2 daughters, and another one of their friends, we are all going to Guatemala to the Range of Motion Project. It's this wonderful organization that's been around for now 17 years, guys. They've been around for 17 years. Many of you have probably already heard of the Range of Motion Project, also known as ROMP. So I will be taking a romp down to Guatemala. They have a clinic there and one in Ecuador. So they serve the local amputees there. So the kind of funny story, I have a funny story to tell about this particular leg. I was in St. Augustine. St. Augustine is a little bit ways north here from Tampa, and it's actually the oldest city in the United States. It should be a bucket list item. Beautiful, beautiful city with beautiful history. A lot of Spanish history there. So it's kind of a personal favorite for me. So one of my favorite places in St. Augustine to visit, along with the fort and the Fountain of Youth, is Spanish Military Hospital, right? So I go there all the time. I love doing the tour. And they talk a lot about how they used to do mainly amputations back then in the 1600s. That's the biggest thing that they did in the Spanish Military Hospital, and the techniques and the surgical tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So one day I decided I'm going to be real funny. And after the tour was over, I started doing a little live show in the Spanish Military Hospital. It's actually, if you're really bored, you can scroll through the archives and you can see this in my Facebook Cosi Talks page. And so I got caught, and I wasn't supposed to be doing that, and I got politely kicked out of the hospital. So it was really, really a shining moment for me as I walk out of the hospital with my tail tucked between my legs and my kids seeing their mother get kicked out of the Spanish Military Museum Hospital, right? Well, apparently the person who manages the hospital saw the video and then contacted me and I said that one of their patrons had a family member who passed away, and they had a prosthesis that they wanted to donate, and they didn't know who to donate it to or where to go, but they just happened to see my video and they looked and they, figured out what it is that I do with the community, and they reached out to me. So I now have this beautiful C3, very good shape leg that I will be taking with me to Guatemala, to someone who is really going to have their life changed and being fitted for this knee. So I am so glad I decided to break the rules and get kicked out of that hospital that day, because now this person is going to get a leg. And I am so grateful to the family of this individual who took the time to find me, contact me, and pay for the shipping to have this shipped to me in such beautiful, beautiful condition. So there's the story behind that. But next Wednesday, guys, if you don't see me live, I'm going to try to go live, but I will be in Guatemala and we'll just see what kind of internet reception we have going on. And I can't wait to show you guys the videos and the people we're going to be getting to work with and everything there. It's a beautiful organization. So that's going to be it for this week. And I'll hopefully see you guys next week. May not be the same bat time, but it'll be the same bat channel. And we'll see you then. All right, guys, as always, thank you for letting me be a part of your lives this evening, and we'll see you next time. God bless.